In March 1959, as Dalai Lama took refuge in India, Chinese Premier Mao was furious with the Indians. He ordered the Chinese army to secretly prepare for a war. The Indians needed to be taught a lesson. Pentagon planners understood that with Tibet under China's control, India has become a frontline state. Pentagon now started wargaming, creating dioramas and heavily increased espionage on China. But before China, Laos, Congo or Berlin, there was a far more urgent communist threat near the American homeland. Barely 300 kilometers off the Florida coast, the island nation of Cuba. Increasingly, the guerrilla revolutionary leader of Cuba, Fidel Castro, turned to the Soviets and openly threatened America. Under increasing threats from Castro, Kennedy greenlighted CIA's plan for a covert regime change in Cuba. This set in motion a disastrous chain of events. The news of Americans invading was leaked to Castro by the Russian intelligence. Even before CIA's invasion force landed in Cuba, Castro was ready with his revolutionary troops. On 17th April 1961, the American invasion force landed at the Bay of Pigs in southwestern Cuba. They immediately ran into swampy terrain and was quickly surrounded by Cuban troops. Castro personally directed Cuban defenses and the invasion force faced a barrage of attacks. Every plan they had started failing. Under severe strain, the invasion force now called for American air support, their last resort. But Kennedy refused to authorize full US air support, as that would expose the covert mission into an open invasion, violating every international law. Within the next 72 hours, mayhem reigned. Most of the invasion force fighters were either killed or captured, and for Kennedy, his first major foreign policy test, right in his backyard, collapsed in full public view. Fidel Castro turned this American failure in the Bay of Pigs into a propaganda triumph. He, along with the Soviets, publicized the Cuban resistance to international media. America was visibly in the back foot against communism. Right around this period, India and Portugal were locked in a diplomatic stalemate over Goa. By the early 1960s, Goa remained one of the last European colonies in Asia. While Britain and France had exited India, Portugal refused to relinquish Goa, Daman and Diu. Pandit Nehru, after 14 years of failed negotiations, finally ordered for military action. On December 18, 1961, India launched Operation Vijay. The operation was a coordinated tri-service assault. Nearly 30,000 Indian troops advanced into Goa from multiple axes. The Indian Navy blockaded coastal positions and neutralized Portuguese ships, while the Indian Air Force conducted limited strikes on communication hubs and airfields to prevent reinforcement. Portuguese forces numbered barely 3,500 men, poorly equipped and spread thin across the territory. Governor General Manuel Antonio Vassallo Silva was ordered by Portugal's dictator Salazar to fight to the last man. But the Governor General refused. Recognizing the futility of resistance and wanting to avoid civilian bloodshed, Governor General surrendered the day after Operation Vijay started. The operation lasted just 36 hours, and casualties were minimal by the standards of military operations. 22 Indians and 30 Portuguese died in action. With this decisive victory, 451 years of Portuguese rule in India came to an end. International reaction split sharply. Across Asia and Africa, newly independent nations supported India, but Europeans and America condemned India, fearing similar military reprisals in other countries. Kennedy went from celebrating Pandit Nehru just 6 months back, flipped to order an American resolution in the UN Security Council condemning India. The resolution was supported by Britain and France, but Soviet Russia, in a show of diplomatic shield, outright vetoed this resolution. For the first time, this signaled India's quiet strategic drift towards Moscow. In this volatile geopolitical backdrop, in May of 1962, Nikita Khrushchev, along with Fidel Castro, decided to place Soviet intermediate-range nuclear missiles in Cuba. Of all the situations created in the last 100 years, this was the single most dangerous move which took the world to the brink of an all-out nuclear war. And as the Cuban nuclear missile crisis distracted the entire globe, Premier Mao took exactly this opportunity to strike at India. The Indo-China war was finally on.